By the end of this video, you'll understand your aging timeline. As in, you'll learn about what changes you can expect in your body as you cross your 40s, 50s, 60s, all the way till you are 100 years old. Now, some of you may experience these changes earlier, and some of you may experience a delay in experiencing these changes. But overall, you will experience all of this as you age. You might be wondering, but Samarth, I barely know biology. How the hell can I understand such complex information? Because we're going to be diving into aging through the changes in 10 of our major body parts that you use on a regular basis, like your eyes, nose, ears, tongue, skin, muscle, bone, brain, heart, and hormones. We will use these 10 body parts to help you understand what happens to your body in your 40s, 50s, 60s, all the way till your 100s. But more importantly, right now, I am going to introduce you to the 3 pillars of longevity, a simple yet complete understanding of how to age like a pro. And just like every other video, we're giving away something worth hundreds of dollars to you for free. So for this episode, I'm giving away the entire timeline of how your body ages and what you can do about it as a document, so you can refer to it and make sure you understand where you are and how to avoid unnecessary pitfalls that come with aging. Listen, when most people watch any aging related or health related video, the first reaction they have is, oh shit, I'm fucked. So I understand your concern. But I assure you that is not the case. The things we're going to discuss in this episode may cause concern, but if handled well and handled with awareness, you can live a longer, healthier, and more vital life than many or any of your ancestors combined. Having said that, here's a crucial question to answer. How do our eyes age? Like Andrew Huberman says, our eyes aren't just extensions of our brain, but they are our brain itself. That means that our eyes actually stem out from our brain like plants stem out from their roots. And as we age, our eyes tend to become more dry, our vision becomes slightly more unclear, and our ability to perceive objects decreases drastically. Many adults begin to get glasses late into their 40s and 50s due to a condition called presbyopia. That's basically when the lens of the eyes become more stiff and make it difficult to focus on nearby objects. Now, can this be corrected? The answer is maybe. A lot of scientists claim that certain eye exercises help improve vision in most folks. But honestly, this is a hit or miss situation. So imagine your eyes as a musical instrument and your brain as the musician. Eye exercises are like teaching the musician to play the instrument better. The instrument doesn't change, but the musician gets better at using it, leading to better music. And that's what eye exercises do. They improve the connective tissue between your brain and eyeball rather than make your eyeball more efficient, if that makes sense. And if not for eye exercises, is there a way you can improve your eyesight? According to 2 research papers, one of which was cited on the Andrew Huberman podcast, students who spent 2 hours or around 2 hours in sunlight were significantly less likely to develop myopia, otherwise called nearsightedness. So does that mean that getting sunlight will help with eyesight overall? Honestly, these studies aren't the best ones to look at when we're considering people over their 40s, 50s, or 60s, because they're referring to myopia or nearsightedness, not presbyopia, which is aging-related eye decay as we discussed earlier. So as of now, we're still trying to figure out how to deal with presbyopia effectively, but is there a way to delay it from happening or even slow it down? That's actually one of the three pillars of longevity, which is what we're going to be covering at the end of this episode. So make sure you keep watching. Having said that, here's something shocking. Someone in their 40s or 50s has only a 14% risk of hearing loss, but someone in their 70s has around a 33% chance of hearing loss. Think about that for a second. 1 out of 3 people in their 70s are likely to have impaired hearing. So between the ages of 40 to 70, the likelihood of hearing loss doubles. Which brings us to an important question. How do our ears age? Brian Johnson, the poster boy for reverse aging, says that his left ear is 64 years old, even if he is just in his 40s. Now, what does that mean? Basically, his ears took a lot of damage from shooting practice as a child, which makes it now resemble the ear of a 64-year-old. Crazy, right? And what's crazier is that each of us actually have 6 ears, 3 on the left and 3 on the right, the outer, the middle, and the inner ear. And we age in all 3 of them. That being said, are there any audio exercises to improve your hearing? Well, most of the studies in this field basically train adults with hearing aids to be able to pick up conversation when there is a lot of background noise, or to help them recognize certain frequencies that they'd lost the ability to do. But similar to eye exercises, these audio exercises basically help your brain learn to listen better rather than make your ear more effective at hearing. In simple terms, think of your ears as a musical instrument and your brain as the musician. When you perform ear exercises, you basically become better at playing the musical instrument rather than improving the musical instrument itself. So technically, your ears don't get better at hearing. You just get better at using them. And I'll cover how you can naturally delay hearing loss due to aging when we get into the 3 pillars of longevity at the end of this video. So take a seat back, because if you are a foodie or you hate food, you're definitely going to want to hear this. Why does food taste more bland as we age? If you've ever gotten a cold, you will realize that a blocked nose means you can't taste what you eat. And if you can't taste the food you eat in the first place, that's what happens to most adults as they age. They lose their ability to smell and also lose some of their taste buds. This study from the National Institute of Aging suggests that the number of taste buds that you have decreases after your 60s. In fact, your salivary glands also produce less saliva, leading to a drier mouth, which leads to a decreased taste. So with your sense of smell declining and your taste buds dropping, there is no wonder why old adults have a decreased desire to eat. But why is that important? If you have a decreased desire to eat, then you are more likely to become malnourished. And as an older adult, malnourishment can affect you far worse than it did when you were in your 20s or 30s. And I am not even going to get into the problems of overeating, especially as an older adult, regardless of whether you are malnourished or not. But here's something amazing yet obvious. Being physically active makes you desire food more, and it also helps you enhance taste sensitivity, at least for a lot of people. But how is that? Firstly, an increase in your physical activity automatically makes you crave food, whether you can or cannot taste it. Secondly, being physically active makes you less at risk for obesity, which is directly related to how well you can taste food. In fact, the more obese you are, the worse your taste is, even in your younger years. And you don't need to age to know that. So remember, the older you grow, the more you need to train your senses but the less you need to trust them. Rely on data that you can collect by doing certain tests like blood tests. And with that being said, here's a crazy fact. The easiest way to find someone's age is through their skin. Which brings me to a question the entire cosmetic industry is built on. How does the skin age? So between your 40s to 50s or 50s to 60s, the first thing that you'll notice is that certain parts of your body will start to develop wrinkles. In most cases, the wrinkles will develop in areas that are most exposed to sunlight. So basically your forearms, your neck, and your face. And some of us will also notice it around parts where we've lost excessive amounts of weight. But why is that? Why does sunlight on our skin make us get wrinkles faster? According to research, the main reason is UV radiation, particularly UVB radiation, otherwise called harmful UV radiation. UV radiation makes our skin less elastic over time by breaking down the elastin fibers and collagen in our skin. Now, does skin color have something to do with how quickly you can get wrinkles? The answer is yes. Yes, it does. The lighter your skin, the more likely you are to get wrinkles. That's why most dark-skinned folk tend to get wrinkles later in their life than a lot of lighter-skinned folk. And obviously, this comparison is between a light-skinned person and a dark-skinned person who has the same exposure to sunlight. But why is that? Because darker skin has more melanin in it, and melanin has the unique ability of absorbing, processing, and blocking out harmful UV radiation, otherwise known as UVB radiation. And that's why most people from countries around the equator line have dark skin in the first place, because their ancestors developed dark skin as an evolutionary adaptation to deal with UV radiation, which is highest around the equator of the globe. But that's just the generalization, and we'll go deeper into how the skin ages and why we get wrinkles and how you can delay this aspect of aging in coming videos. But for now, here's a secret unlock to make sure all your senses, your metabolism, and your bone mass remain healthy as you age. Gaining and keeping as much muscle mass as you naturally can. Multiple studies across different fields of research have proven that gaining muscle mass and the process of gaining muscle mass, which is strength training, can keep your brain, body, and mind fully functioning for a long time. Now, when I say gaining muscle, most people assume they'll eventually look like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime just by training naturally a few hundred times and by doing a few thousand repetitions of weight. That's a joke, bro. You or me couldn't look like that even if we ate 300 grams of protein a day, trained weights like a maniac every single day for 10 years straight, and even trained all the way into our 40s, 50s, and 60s. In fact, gaining muscle naturally is one of the hardest and most time-consuming processes for your body. To give you an example of how difficult it is to gain muscle naturally, I spent 10 years lifting weight to gain 10 kilos of muscle naturally. Trust me, it gets harder over time. But if done right, it will save you from aging-related issues almost like nothing else. And if you don't believe me, here's something that is guaranteed to blow your mind. Have you ever heard of something called the hope molecule? Basically, scientists refer to certain molecules released by muscles after exercise as hope molecules, its scientific name being myokines. But why would anybody call myokines a hope molecule? Because that's what it does. The myokines that your muscles release after exercise are responsible for reducing stress, improving your metabolic health, making your brain sharper, calmer, and it protects you against mental disorders like depression and anxiety. And trust me, that's just the start of it. So imagine that you're well into your 70s and you've managed to gain as much muscle as you humanly and naturally could. You would be much more likely to avoid almost every type of age-related decay that we're going to speak about in this video. But here's something you need to know but don't know. What happens to muscle mass as you age if you don't exercise or eat enough protein? This is where it gets interesting. If you're in your 40s to 60s, or you know people in their 40s to 60s, you'll notice that they tend to lose size around their arms and legs, but their belly remains the same. That's because of sarcopenia, which is just the fancy science term for age-related muscle loss. But what does sarcopenia mean? Sarco meaning flesh and penia meaning loss of. Remember this because you're going to need it in this video. Sarco meaning flesh and penia meaning loss of. Anyway, as you grow older, you tend to lose muscle mass all around your body, especially if you don't use it. But why does that matter? Well, the lesser muscle mass you have as you age, the more insulin resistant you become. And why does that matter? Because being more insulin resistant makes it harder from us to heal from previous injuries, weakens our immune system, makes us gain fat faster, and makes us break down muscle faster, and it also leaves us more vulnerable to heart attacks. And listen, I'm not trying to scare you by saying this, but the more insulin resistant we become, the closer we become to being a diabetic. And if you're someone who's always had low muscle mass, either due to genetics or poor lifestyle factors, then you become at risk for developing type 2 diabetes. For those of you that don't know, type 2 diabetes is when your body becomes so insulin resistant that your body becomes terrible at breaking carbohydrates into energy, and it also becomes inefficient at transporting that energy that you get from your carbohydrates to parts where it's required as energy, like your organs, muscles, and other places where you need them. So carbohydrates in the form of glucose basically just float around in your blood and start binding to your blood cells. We'd actually covered insulin resistance, how to beat insulin resistance, and how to never get diabetes in the last 2 videos. But in short, gaining muscle is one of the most important factors when it comes to both getting rid of diabetes or not getting it in the first place, and living a long, healthy, and vital life with less chances of organ failures and body decay. So, coming back to age-related muscle loss. Right now, let me answer a question that can give you 15 quality years of life. Is age-related muscle loss, as in sarcopenia, curable or at least avoidable? Yes, it is curable. And yes, it is avoidable. But how? Simple answer is to eat 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram body weight and to train weights, as in strength train, at least 3 times a week. We'll get into the details of how to train your body into your 40s and onwards into another video, but for now understand that poor muscle mass is your number 1 ticket to quicker and poorer aging. So eat your protein and strength train at least thrice a week. But what about motor skills, like your ability to move freely and avoid injuries? Does having low muscle mass impact those? Sadly, losing muscle mass also puts you at risk of injuries. And why is that? Think about it like this. The lesser muscle mass you have, the more load your bones and joints take every time you move. The more load your joints and bones take, the quicker they age. And as a result, you become more prone to injuries in those areas. But between your 40s and 50s, these aspects aren't as visible as they would be in your 60s onwards. And I'm about to take this one step further. Once some of your muscles depleted due to aging or malnourishment, your body begins to dig into your bones for resources. And trust me, you'll thank me for telling you this. As you age, your bones tend to lose a little bit of density. And why is that? As we move into our 40s and our 50s, our muscle mass tends to decrease. And because of that, our bones begin to lose density because it basically isn't needed like before. The early stages of loss in bone mineral density is called osteopenia. Osteo meaning bone and penia meaning loss of. just like how we call age-related muscle loss as sarcopenia. And if osteopenia gets worse, like it does for women after menopause, it's called osteoporosis, as in our bodies become more brittle and susceptible to damage. But here's a question you might want to ask yourself. Shouldn't obese people actually have good bone mass if lifting weight is helpful for holding on to bone density because they're fatter and they hold on to more weight? Funnily enough, that's true. But there's a catch to it. Just because your bones are dense doesn't mean that they're less susceptible to damage or fracture. Wait, what? You see, when you're obese, your body puts on bone mineral density only in certain areas of your body, which means that even though your bones are thicker in certain places, because they're unevenly loaded, they are actually more at risk for fracture than they would be if you weren't obese. And that's at least what modern research says. And with that being said, now you know how our bones age. And if you're somebody who loves thinking or having their own thought process, I need to tell you something insane. The risk of brain disease for people in their 40s is barely 5%. But by the time these people reach their 70s, almost 30% of the population has a risk of brain disease. So basically, your risk of getting a brain disease goes up by almost 6 times in just 30 years. So let's answer an important question. How does the brain age? And how can we stop ourselves from becoming that 70-year-old that suffers from brain disorders like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and dementia? Well, your brain reaches peak maturity at the age of 30, and it begins to decrease in size as you grow older, especially if you're not using it well. The two main areas of the brain that shrink are two extremely important regions for us humans. Number one, the hippocampus, and number two, the frontal lobes. For those of you that don't know, the frontal lobes are responsible for attention and focus, problem solving, retrieving memory, making judgment, emotional regulation, speech production, and a lot more. So basically very important. Now imagine what would happen if that keeps shrinking. And to make things worse, the hippocampus is the part of your brain that helps in the formation of new memories and learning. So basically, as you age, the two most important parts of your brain take a hit. Not to mention the decrease in both gray and white matter in the brain. Now, is there a way to solve this? Actually, yes. There is a no pill way and a no surgery way to make sure that you keep your brain's abilities even into your late 80s. And I'll reveal that answer as we reach the 3 pillars of longevity. So stay focused, because now that we've understood how the brain ages, here is something that will make your heart bounce. For the first time in human history, kids have begun to die out of heart attacks. And if anyone in your family has heart issues, it's important that you understand how does the heart and the rest of your cardiovascular system age. There are 3 major differences between a young cardiovascular system and an old person's cardiovascular system. Number 1, arterial stiffness. As you grow older, your arteries become more stiff, and to make up for this increased stiffness, your body increases its blood pressure. Number 2, decreased heart function. The older you get, the harder your heart has to work to pump blood compared to before. And number 3, impaired blood regulation. The older you get, the more likely it is for you to see that your blood pressure goes up and down and fluctuates regularly. And because of these 3 changes, people tend to develop high blood pressure late into their 60s and 70s. Now, is there a way around this? Absolutely. But like I said, we'll get into that in the 3 pillars of longevity, because right now we're going to answer a super important question. What happens to our hormones as we age? I'm sure you already know that we have a lot of different types of hormones. Over 50 hormones, actually. And that's a large topic in itself. But what's common in the way that our hormones age is that the ones we need, like melatonin, the sleep hormone, and dopamine, the happiness hormone, decrease over time. And the ones we don't need a lot of, like cortisol, the stress hormone, increases over time. And because of these mix of hormones going up and down, our bodies become less energetic, heals slower, gains fat, loses muscle, breaks down bones, and basically all hell breaks loose slowly over time. And that sucks. Now, is there a way to keep your hormones balanced or at least slow down their deterioration as you age? Actually, yes. And I'm not sure if you'll believe me when I say it. But every single thing we've spoken of so far, straight from our senses, our muscles, our bones, heart, brain, and hormones, can actually be kept well in function late into our 70s and 80s with just one solution. And that solution is the 3 pillars of longevity. And we're going to get into that very soon. But for now, let me address the topic that you are all here for. And trust me, you do not want to miss this. I introduced to you the aging timeline. And to make it simpler for you all to understand, I put it into a graph format to make sure you understand exactly what's happening. So now you all can clearly see what's happening in what percentage of people in these age ranges. You can also find the aging timeline and the graph for it as a free download, even though it's worth hundreds of dollars otherwise. So check the description and get your own copy. As you can see, there is one major truth I wanted to point out when it comes to the trends of what we're seeing. In most of these diseases, we've listed out that they all start off at only around 1 out of 10 people or 1 out of 20 people being at risk of having them in their 40s or 50s. But by the time people reach their 80s and 90s, almost 1 out of 2 people or 1 out of 3 people will have some or the other disease, and they are also likely to have multiple diseases. Now let that sink in for a minute. If we were able to fix these issues that people began to get in their 40s and 50s, most people would actually move healthily into their 80s and 90s. But how do we fix these issues before they arise? How do we make sure our bones, muscles, senses, heart, and brain don't rot quickly so that we can live a long and healthy life? The answer is simple, yet not easy. Ladies and gentlemen, I finally introduce you to the 3 pillars of longevity. As you can see, the 3 pillars are sleep, nourishment, and movement. And I know this sounds obvious, and it might seem like I have dragged you all this way when I could have just given you the answer way before. But look closely at the words I've used. I've used the term movement instead of exercise because exercise can mean many things. But true movement is about mastering the way your body moves and functions. And I'm not just talking about lifting heavier weights or running longer distances than you already can. I am talking about teaching your body how to connect your feet to your hips, how to improve your mind-to-body connection, how to improve your balance, and the list goes on and on. But the aim still remains to teach your body how to move better. And this perspective goes beyond conventional exercise, emphasizing the importance of moving well to live a long, vital, and mobile life. The more you move and control blood flow throughout your body, the more youthful and vital you remain as you age. So forget fancy exercises and train to move better. How? Basically, training for movement involves 2 important things. Number 1, building a body that's well conditioned to move. So basically, more muscles, less fat, stronger joints, and more mind-to-body coordination. This removes the problem of injuries and being unable to control your body as you move or as you age. And moving to the second point, move the body you build. This is where almost everyone goes wrong while planning their exercise or physical activity routine. There are 2 major categories of people who have any type of physical activity. One category of people only play sports or do activities like dance, fight, run, cycle, etc., which means they only use their bodies to move without training it how to move. And the second category of people only go to gym or perform repeated movements that condition the body, but don't actually teach it how to move better. And as a result, they become more stiff and less able to move, even if they have a better body conditioning than most people. The problem with both categories of these people is that the first category uses their body without conditioning it, leading to damage long term, and the second category of people condition their body but never learn to use it. So, what's the solution? Make sure you train your body with strength training at least 3 times a week for an hour each to condition your body, and use your body and learn different movements in any activity you choose at least twice a week to use the conditioning and learn to move better. This could be anything straight from playing a sport, learning a new dance move, or even climbing trees. Simple. Now, obviously, you knew that physical activity is good for you, but what you didn't know is that not only could it make your skin, ears, and eyes more resilient, but it could also stop your brain from degrading as you grow older. Having said that, here are 3 groundbreaking discoveries about being physically active that you may not have known. Number 1, movement and exercises reduces aging-related damage in the eyes. This article from the American Academy of Ophthalmology found that exercise increased the blood flow to the blood vessels in the eye. In fact, a test was done on mice and it suggested that mice with high physical activity had almost 45% likelihood of age-related damage when compared to non-active mice. Number 2, exercise and movement actually make your skin thicker and more elastic. You wouldn't believe it, but this study that examined 61 Japanese women found that making them do aerobic activity increased their skin elasticity, and making them do resistance training improved both skin elasticity and dermal thickness. And the difference between aerobic training and resistance training was that scientists found that resistance training increased skin thickness by almost 3 times when compared to aerobic training. And number 3, exercise and movement can make you less likely to have hearing loss as you age. And there are many studies to prove this. And if that wasn't enough, here's another bonus point of moving frequently. Learning new movements have been proven to reduce overall deterioration of the frontal cortex, the hippocampus, and the gray matter of your brain, which means better decision making, better memory, better self-control, even into your late years. Now, if that doesn't get you moving, I don't know what will. And with that being said, let's move to the second pillar of longevity, nourishment. I use the word nourishment because the word diet has been misused by the entire health industry. The word diet almost always means you eliminate certain foods and you suddenly feel better. For example, keto avoids carbs, vegan avoids meat and dairy, and carnivore removes most carbohydrates and vegetables. But nourishment basically means doing everything to not be malnourished or dehydrated. So it's not about eliminating certain foods, but making sure you're not overeating or undereating what your body needs. So for example, imagine eating the right amount of protein, carbohydrates, fats, and optimizing your vitamins and minerals and hydrating how much you need to hydrate. That is what I mean by nourishment. A person who makes sure they're never malnourished will live a much, much higher quality of life than somebody who's malnourished, regardless of how good they look or what diet they follow. So how do you nourish yourself? Number 1, Get a blood test, see what's missing, and optimize those. Over 1 billion people are vitamin D deficient worldwide. So you might be too. And you may think, oh, but I've been vitamin D or B12 deficient for so long and it isn't a big deal. Basically, what that means is that you have let your body take a toll on the inside without knowing it. Being malnourished is like being a house with a weak foundation. It might stand for now, but it's only a matter of time before things start to fall apart. And to give you a reality check, all of us will inevitably be either deficient or have too much of certain nutrients in us. So it's our job to make sure to keep them in optimal levels. Number 2, make sure you're getting the right amount of protein, carbohydrates, fats, and water. How do you know how much to eat? That's the question that pops in your mind when I say get the right amount of macronutrients. Just use any macro calculator online, figure out what your macros are, eat them, measure your weight, keep increasing or decreasing how much you eat to reach your ideal weight. And of course, drink enough water to have pale urine. Not transparent, not bright, pale urine. That's how you keep yourself nourished. Simple, but not easy. Which brings me to the final and most important pillar of longevity: sleep. The difference in sleep quality between a bad sleeper and a good sleeper is one of the biggest factors that decide whether you are going to be that 1 out of 2 90-year-olds who don't have any cognitive issues. Forget turning 90 without brain diseases. A person who sleeps less than 6 hours a day has 20% more risk of heart attack than a person who sleeps more than 6 hours a day. And I can keep going on and on and on about the benefits of these 3 pillars. But you get the point. Sleep 8 hours a day, make sure you're not malnourished, and practice movement. Regardless of what therapies you try or what supplements you take, sleep, nourishment, and movement are the basis of all healthy and long living organisms. But what is the best approach to make sure you spend as less time as possible and get the most benefit? I've got good news for you. If you want a 15-minute training plan that will make sure you live longer and healthier, go grab the 15-minute longevity blueprint from the previous video. That will also give you the movement plan that you need to make sure you hit all the bases of living a long, healthy, and vital life. And we've already covered what's considered good nutrition in the first video according to evolution, but we will make sure to extensively cover the best diet in the world and amazing sleep practices that will help you wake up feeling like you are in Wonderland. That being said, don't take these 3 pillars lightly. Just because you've heard it before doesn't mean it's outdated. It just means that you weren't able to understand its significance. And that's okay. But it's like I always say, the best time to start was 5 years ago, but the second best time to start is today. And I wanted to address that the last 3 videos have gone in depth about who we are as humans, where we came from, how we evolved, all the way to the concept of longevity escape velocity, a scientific concept of living till 150 in the body of a 30-year-old human being. So if you haven't watched those 2 videos, please go watch it. The second video has the 15-minute longevity blueprint that you'll need to improve your movement. And there is tons of value and of course more freebies that folks have paid hundreds of dollars for in both those videos. But I want to take a second and be real honest with you. I'm a little bit disappointed in myself, and I've been holding myself from addressing 2 important questions. How do individual body parts age? And what are the tried and tested practices that experts rely on to give you the best result when it comes to aging? So, I am super glad to announce the release of our next level aging series. From the next video onwards, you are going to be learning about the aging of different body parts individually. And we're going to start with the most obvious part. How does it age? what is the role of genetics and lifestyle, and what do they have to play in keeping your hair for as long as you can? What are the most common myths in the hair growth industry that waste money and ruin health? How can we solve for pattern baldness and age-related baldness? And we'll also be discussing the side effects of commonly used treatments like minoxidil, finasteride, and microneedling. And not only that, we are also going to be answering what is the best shampoo for your scalp. So if that interests you, please hit the bell icon. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you in the next episode.